In this video, we will be looking at the meaning of the literary term setting. Now, what does setting mean? Setting refers, as you can see from this visual also, setting refers to the time and the place or when and where of the story. So, a narrative is set in a particular period, right? In a particular time and in a particular location. It can have multiple locations also, right? It can switch back and forth in time also, but all of those elements together make up for the setting of a story. Now, this story can be the story of a book, the story of a film, the story of a play, right? So, setting is used in novels, short stories, plays, films, etc. Now, setting is usually introduced during the exposition. What do we mean by exposition? Exposition is the beginning of the story. So, in the beginning, you might see characters moving here and there. Even think of a film that you may have recently seen, or a film, your favorite film. In the beginning, you will see characters. You're still trying to figure out, oh, how is this person related to this person? Oh, she is his daughter. Okay, this one is her son, and they live in this house. So your mind is taking it all in, right? So that is what is meant by setting. Now, if I have to give you examples of films, so a film like Mangal Pandey, for example, it is set in pre-independent India. Not only pre-independent India, but it is set in the 17th century. So the moment you start watching the film, you know this is not part of your setting. This is not your world. This is a world from the past, right? With because people are not using mobile phones, people are living a particular kind of life, and there are particular kinds of means of transport or the architecture of the place. Everything will tell you about the setting. People are wearing certain kinds of clothes, right? So all of that is part of the setting, and the setting is introduced to us right at the exposition. Exposition means the very beginning of the film. The moment the film begins, from the point the film begins, you start absorbing, you start internalizing the setting. Now, setting can also include the environment of the story. A story may have a certain mood, right? So, this can be the street, the location, the actual place. So, maybe a story is set in the hills or on the beach, but also the climate. So, whether it's very sunny or whether it's a very stormy night, if you watch horror movies, you will always find that it's a stormy night, there's thunder and there's lightning, and then there's someone is driving down an empty road and the car breaks down, right? So that's the setting of a horror movie. So it's not just the forest or the highway which is important, but it's also the weather, it's also the climate, it's also the physical surroundings, the environment, the social and cultural surroundings, right? So all of that contribute to the setting. Now, certain films, certain books, you may find they are just set in one house or in one physical space, like a building or a room inside a building. I'm sure you have watched plenty of films like that, which are set just in one room, right? Or maybe in one locality, in one neighborhood, or in a bus, or it's a train journey. Like if you watch this film, The Burning Train, it's an old film, but you will see the moreover the whole setting of the film is the train, and the train catches fire, and then how do the people, the main protagonists, they solve that big problem, they resolve the issue, right? So the burning tree, so things like that. So it could be some mode of transport, or it could be a physical establishment like a building or a house, or it could be just a room. Like you have these psychological thrillers or the crime thrillers, where most of the time it is just maybe one room where the whole action takes place, right? So that could become the setting of the story. Now, there are two kinds of settings. One type is called the backdrop setting, and the other type is called the integral setting. What I was describing till now is integral setting. uh, Whereas in certain cases, you may read some books at times where you're not able to exactly tell whether this person lives in this place. I mean, everything is a little ambiguous, right? Like, for example, um, say the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If you take a fairy tale for that matter, right? Now, where did Snow White exactly live, or Red Riding Hood? So, where did she exactly live? Which forest, which wood was she crossing? How did she encounter the wolf in that wood? So, most of the time, fairy tales don't have an exact setting which will give you a very clear picture of the geography or the culture of that place. So, that's called backdrop setting, right? So, they just create a backdrop. Backdrop is background scene against which the story plays out. But in other cases, sometimes the setting is extremely detailed. Like, for example, if it's a film based in, set in Mumbai, so they will show you everything of Mumbai, which will give you a very clear picture. This cannot be any other city in the world, it is Mumbai. So, for example, I'm reminded of this film. I think eh, it's either Munna Bhai Part 1 or Part 2. I don't remember which one. But right from the dialect of Hindi, which um, the protagonist uses, to the places that are shown in the film, like Dhobi Ghat, right? So you can see the washermen washing their clothes. So now Dhobi Ghat is this area in Mumbai, right? Is this huge neighborhood in Mumbai. So you immediately know this is Mumbai. This cannot be any place else. So that's the setting. So, what does a setting do actually? A setting gives context to the characters' actions in a storyline. So, uh, ex- if we were to extend the example of Munna Bhai, now Munna Bhai wouldn't be Munna Bhai if he had not been in the setting of Mumbai, right? Because the whole word, word Bhai itself is so particular. It's so typical to Mumbai, right? And the kind of locality he lives in, the kind of work he does. He's a small time thug and a kind of, muscle man. So that setting gives him, allows him to speak that dialect, and allows him to be a kind of rough bad man with a heart of gold. That kind of combination is possible because of the setting, right? Now, I have over here, now for example, I have these visuals for you. Now, if you look at these visuals, you will see this is a still from the Netflix web series Anne with an E. Now, if you look at the way this girl is dressed, you will immediately make out that this can't be India. This is a white girl, and the gate behind, the kind of umbrella she's holding. So clearly, it's a very particular setting. She's very fashionably and formally dressed. So it must be a European woman, somewhere set in a European city. Actually, it's a Canadian series, so it's pretty much similar. And I've taken women as deliberately so that you can see how the clothes, the background, their expressions, the accessories, everything contributes to the setting. Now, here, this is another still from the Netflix series Caliphate. Now, these are Muslim women, and it's set in Syria, right? So you can see the hijabs that they're wearing, the seriousness on their faces, and the background. You have a stone, half built stone door over, I mean, partly exposed doorway. So all of that contributes to the setting. Here again, if you see, there's this woman with a red vermilion mark on her head. So clearly, this is India. This is colonial Bengal, right? So she has a pallu, she has a ghungat, she's covering her head, but she has covered her head. See, all three women have covered their heads, right? But their heads are covered very differently. So immediately you know what religion they belong to, right? So she's most, in all likelihood, she's a Christian, these are Muslims, and this one is a Hindu. So all of that is depicted through the clothes the person wears, the background, the composition of the scene. So here you have the men who are wearing this open necked cotton shirt, so it'll, and one of them has a shawl, so it's very obvious this kind of clothes. So this is the setting of colonial Bengal, this is Canada, late 19th century, and this is present day Syria, right? Now, let's look at how setting is developed in a story, how it is written into a story. Because when you watch a film, it's very different. It is the visual that impacts you, and you just absorb all of this, the background, the clothes, the accessories, the composition, the way the characters are standing, everything is absorbed by you through the visual medium. But when the writer writes a story, the writer describes the setting in the story, right? So let's read it together. As the sun set in the evening sky, Malcolm slowly turned and walked toward his home. All was silent and still. Through the window, he could see his older brother James watching a football game on the TV. James was home from his first year of college in the city. It was lonely at times, but Malcolm felt it was rather nice to be in James's shadow during his senior year of high school. So, this is evening time. The sun was setting, and this is obviously a road on which you have a person called Malcolm uh, walking, and he's walking towards his house, and everything is quiet. And as he approaches his house, he can see through the window that his older brother is watching TV. He's watching a soccer game, right? And then there's some additional information about his older brother and how Malcolm feels towards his older brother. So, this is how setting is written into the narrative so that it helps you visualize, it helps you imagine the scene. So, if you look at the detailing, the time is evening, then senior year of high school. So, you immediately have a picture of the kind of person. So, it's a young person, it's a school going boy, a student, an adolescent, maybe a teenager, modern times. The period is modern times because football and TV make it very apparent that it's contemporary, right? It's in present times. It's modern. Right. So that was all about setting, and I will see you again with another session, with another topic in another session.